At 7 a.m. on 14 August 1987, police raided the headquarters of Australian New Age group the Great White Brotherhood, where 28 children were removed. The group's leader Anna Hamilton-Byrne was believed by its members to be the reincarnation of Christ in female form. Anna Hamilton was born Evelyn Grace Victoria Edwards in December 1921. Evelyn came from an impoverished background in eastern Australia, the first of 7 children born to father Ralph and mother Florence. Her father first left home when she was just 3 years old, and he was in and out of his children's lives for years. Her mother believed she was a medium who could communicate with the dead. She tried to convince a community of her gift. Many believed she had a gift and paid her for her services, but after she sat her hair alight while in the street and was diagnosed with schizophrenic, and she was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Evelyn was 20 years old when her mother was committed, and she had spent much of her life witnessing the effects of her illness. Florence moved from institution to institution until she eventually died in hospital. Eager to carve out a new life, Evelyn would change her name to Anna Hamilton and would marry a farmer called Lionel Harris. Her need for reinvention: she would have numerous cosmetic surgeries. The newlyweds planned to adopt a child and set their hearts on a baby boy from Barnado's adoption agency. It seemed as if Anne's dream of a new life was about to come true until tragedy struck. Lionel was killed in a car crash just before they were to finalize the adoption. Alone and in need of some rest, Anna immersed herself in the practice of yoga. It has been growing in popularity. She began to lead classes for women, mostly of the wives of wealthy professionals. She discovered people would follow her easily, and in 1960 she became a tantric yoga instructor. Her classes blended yoga with philosophical teachings. It was a huge success, offering spiritual guidance to middle-aged women. Anne's need for control and her fear of abandonment were beginning to turn into a more sinister plan. She convinced many women in the group to divorce their husbands, leaving them with only Anne to turn to. She became all important to these women. Anne's talent for manipulation was about to help her get what she desired more than anything else: children, but she needed to expand her small yoga group to achieve this. In 1962, respected academic Dr. Raynor Johnson became her goal. Anna would be able to legitimize her group and gain influence with respected professionals. One day she would knock on the door of Dr. Raynor and would tell him she knew he was going to India and that his wife was going to get sick. Both turned out to be true, and she would continue to feed him lies, tales of her past, and told him that she wanted to give him eternal life. Dr. Raynor had recently become interested in metaphysics. In May 1963, Anna performed her first miracle. When one of her clients were involved in a car accident, she had injured her eye so badly doctors told her it would leave her partially blind. Anne immediately arranged spiritual help that healed the woman without lasting injury. Dr. Raynor and his powerful friends would quickly fall under her spell. By 1968 she had gathered around 500 people in her group. She had doctors and nurses who gave her access to the elderly, who would surrender their fortunes to her, and judges who would sentence anyone who threatened them. Dr. Raynor was also an invaluable asset to the group. Dr. Howard Whitaker worked at a psychiatric hospital and was able to give Anne illegal prescriptions which she used in her initiations into the group, which she called clearings. New members would be injected with LSD. After a few hours she would appear in a hallway wearing a white gown. The new members were convinced they had seen Jesus Christ. Another had a plan she set in motion. As she had doctors and nurses in the group, she set up a plan to steal babies. The first baby she took was Sarah Moore. The doctor delivering the baby was Raynor's daughter. As soon as Sarah was born, a pillow was placed over the mother's head and injected with a tranquilizer. She was just 16 years old. She had been disowned by her family and was the perfect candidate for Anne's plans. Sarah didn't know that Anne wasn't her mother until she was a teenager. Sometimes mothers gave her children to Anne in exchange for miracles. She would enlist corrupt doctors to poison family members who had a young child, then offer the cure in exchange for giving up their child. When the woman agreed, Anne would order the doctor to stop the poisonings and she'd recover. In 1971, Anna moved her and her first 7 children to a house at Lake Eildon in Victoria called Up Top. The children were aged under 3 years old and were all thought to be siblings. The world could end at any moment, and while the rest of the world be annihilated, the children she had chosen were to save the world and had been given the responsibility to the save world. In 1974 they set up a school, and the daily care of the children was left to 3 women. They were all called aunties and were very strict and ran a military-style regime. By the 1970s the cult built a brick temple across the road where they would commune on Sundays and Thursdays for LSD-fueled sermons. Police were once called to the group's locations and she would welcome them in and serve tea. While this was happening before the police were let in, the children were stuffed into crawl spaces covered with plywood and kept there until the police had gone. In 1978 Anne would marry William Byrne, an ex-RAF officer. He was rich and Anna had a fortune herself. She was now not needing to make people believe she was a messiah, ending one of the longest cons ever played out, but in 1987 she did something that would become her undoing. Sarah and Leanne were allowed to make friends outside of the community. They meet Catherine and Helen, 2 teenage sisters. The girls told the sisters about their unhappy existence in the group. One night the teenage girl's mother would drive the girls home and Sarah had invited the girls to come see up top. When Anna learned of this, Sarah was thrown out of the group, telling her, "You are no longer our daughter and you should go die in the gutter." Sarah would leave and went to live with 2 teenage girls, Kathy and Helen. She would continue to tell them stories of her time in the group, and the mother would relay all of these stories to the local police. Police would raid the Uptop property and found stashes of drugs, but Anna was not there. She was at her home in the USA. The cult began to disperse. Dr. Howard's Whitaker surgery and Dr. Rayner was blacklisted, but none of them were prosecuted. However, in June 1993 Anna and her husband were extradited to Australia to face charges of conspiracy to defraud and committing perjury. The charges were dropped, but Anne pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of making a false declaration. Anna paid £5,000 each in fines and walked free, and Anna would die in June 2019.